Welcome to GROGTALK, episode 12. Dan, 12 episodes of this shenanigans.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
They said it wouldn't last this long.
I think we said it wouldn't last this long.
Well, that's who they is.
Oh, that's right.
We don't know anyone else.
Well, that's not true. We have Bob here.
The Imperial we.
Yes. So I met Bob at the 7-Eleven this morning. I was stopping to get my coffee. And
just drag me. All of a sudden I'm here.
We made it so. Yeah.
So I'm James.
I'm Dan.
And this is Bob. Bob, so tell us about yourself and how long you've been in the hobby of D&D and what are you doing now in D&D?
What's the thing? Long-time gamer, first-time podcast.
Wow, wonderful.
There we go. No, I've been playing for a really long time. I got introduced to it by a friend of mine in 6th grade, something like that.
Which is only a few years ago.
Which is, of course, only like 12 years. No, and went and his brother was playing. I'm really gonna date myself now. It was White Box.
Oh yeah.
With the Men and Magic and stuff, and loved it. Instant addiction, stuff like that. We played that for a little while. We switched over to Tunnels and Trolls, and then RuneQuest and stuff like that. And I DM'd for a while, basic and then advanced. And then, as all good hobbies, you kind of drop off in college and stuff. And just got back into it a few years ago, and was walking around a store and saw a little advertisement that said, if you want to play classic D&D, go to this website. And that's how I found you guys.
All right.
That's how we ended up here.
That's right. So Bob has been part of the Grognards Guild, which Dan started, and that's what this episode is about. So we've done a number of things related to what is Advanced Dungeons & Dragons First Edition, how to play it, what are the features of it, and now we're going to get into transitioning. If you haven't played or wanting to play, but you don't know anyone who wants to play, how do you go from getting the books or reading it into playing? And so this is an opportunity because all three of us have the same thing. Sorry about that.
No worries.
The New Yorker on the Hand thing is going.
I'm down here for that very reason.
That's right. So
we don't want to,
Well, I can't help it, so it's gonna happen because I have to do open air quotes too. So,
okay.
We all have the similar experience of we played up to a certain point, high school, college, and then we went into this long period of not playing, and then only recently, because of life circumstances or whatever, that we're able to play. And I think a lot of people, and a lot of the people that have come to our group have a very similar experience. Right. And there are players out there. There are people who want to play, but how do you get them together? So in this Word of Recall segment, we are now going to talk about how we create. How do you create a group, and how do you keep it going? What works when you're not dealing with your best friends or people that you know intimately, and what doesn't work? So Dan. Because we talked last time or previous session about how you've had a hiatus. How did you start? What was the things you have seen that you thought you were going to do, and then as you've run it, has it changed?
Sure. So I'd say about coming up on 2 years ago. I think the Grognards Guild was
right.
May. We're going to cut on 2 years ago. Probably about 2.5 years ago. I was in my house with my good friend Edward, and for whatever reason, First Edition AD&D came up, and I asked, wow, I wonder if anyone plays First Edition AD&D anymore. It'd be kind of fun to play again. And we looked up, and also the topic of conventions came up, and it'd be pretty cool to go to a convention, and Edward quickly, sometimes I forget about the internet, Edward is quickly out on the internet. I'm just talking about it, and Ed is typing on the internet, and he finds GaryCon, the convention. And so we saw that there's actually First Edition being played at GaryCon, and we went, we had a good time. But I remember thinking to myself that the only way to play First Edition AD&D again is going to be good to go to Wisconsin once a year. And I think unfortunately for a lot of people that's the truth, right? They get to play First Edition AD&D once a year. So I came back and said, well, let's try to play D&D. We were this close, and I know we're for people listening out there, we were very close.
That's right.
We were very close to joining a 5th edition group.
Oh,
because,
wow.
and it's hard to believe, right? Well, we assumed that was all that was available. we didn't think anyone was playing first edition. And so we were very close to joining a 5th edition group. We decided not to do it. And so then we started thinking about, well, can we form a first edition group? And my goal truly was just to have enough players to have a group. It wasn't to have a Grognards guild and a lot of players, it was just to have a group. So all we knew was what we had done in the 80s, how you would form, we
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And you're the only person that actually responded to those efforts. Yeah,
Really?
we knew, we were paper and pencil kind of people. We remember the 80s. You're right.
Yeah.
And what you would do back in the day, back in the day they didn't call these, I didn't know all these acronyms you have now, what your locally friendly comic book store and all this stuff. We just do as a gaming shop. And back in the day, you go to a gaming shop and you post a flyer on some board with your phone number. And that's what we did. Though actually we gave the website. And I think it became pretty clear that no one was ever, the odds that anyone who played first edition AD&D, which number one is a very small amount of people, was going to wander by a flyer, other than Bob.
Yeah.
Bob.
I gotta say, me.
There is one.
Me, yeah, me.
But it was really low. We had that flyer up there. I don't think anyone responded. So I realized, wait a second, there's this thing called the internet. And so I started doing research on how to form a D&D group. And I saw something called meetup.com was being recommended. And I think there's also things like Ren. I don't know, there's group finders. I've posted on a lot of stuff, which wasn't very useful. But the one that I finally decided to do was meetup.com.
Right.
And I had balked at Meetup just because there was an expense involved, and this was still at the time where I felt like I had to justify to my significant other why I was spending money on things like this. And but I finally,
Unhappiness?
well, see, she is that way. She's very nice. She's nice. I don't know why I was concerned about it because she's been amazingly supportive. And so I went to Meetup.com, which for those of you who are not aware is a website where people will start a group. You can say you want to start a cycling group. Say, okay, Orlando Cycling Group, meetup, and you schedule events, and people RSVP and they come. And it's just a way to generate interest in activities and have like-minded people come together. So I did a first edition AD&D group, and I was pretty aggressive about, I went to other meetup groups that had gamers, and I looked for people who looked like, nothing personal, but looked like, well, I don't like that look.
Okay.
Looked like us.
Right, okay.
Like maybe we had played games in the maybe we were alive in the 80s.
So you made some assumptions.
Yeah.
I made some assumptions so
Wow.
that when you got
You
that,
assumed some things
when you,
about us.
yes, I assumed some things about. I was stereotyping, which is wrong. But I sent out a lot of meetup communications to people in local gaming groups I thought looks like they might be interested in first edition. Or had indicated that they started. A lot of people have little bios on. Started gaming in the 80s, and amazingly to me, the very first game that we had, we set it for about a month out. We ended up with, I think, 10 players, 2 DMs, me and Edward, 10 players. We started Keep on the Borderlands.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and there's only, I don't know if there's anyone, yes, there is from that group right at the beginning. Well, no, there's no one left actively playing anymore from that. So there's been a lot of turnover, unfortunately. But so that's how we started it, and we got a great reception, and we've been going ever since.
So, just to recap, you thought about it, you kind of looked things on the internet, but you started. So, how did you pick the first store? Because I think there's a story about you actually did some surveying of stores. Did that happen at that point, or you just picked the nearest store to you?
No, we did surveying. So what happened was, and I hear a lot of people online, they say they don't have any players in their area. They're looking for a group, they don't have anyone there. And I think sometimes, I really think you just have to take the initiative. So there's a lot of Facebook sites like RPG Connection. You can say, hey, I'm in Florida, anyone out there? I haven't seen people be tremendous, I could be wrong, but I haven't seen people being tremendously successful with that. I think you just have to sort of go with it and have the initiative. But what Edward and I decided was, if we're going to do this meetup thing, we need to just go forward. We can't just sit and wait. So what we did is we had no players, but we set up a game. So we set up a game a month out, saying, Keep on the Borderlands, here's the game. And if no one showed up, then no one showed up, but we're going to set the game. And then what we did was you had to find a place to play, because I think the way things have changed now is back when we played. I assume we all played in somebody's house.
Somebody's house.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
After school, and
During.
during school, right in the library during lunch.
Sorry, Mom. Yeah.
Probably right. And so we knew we needed a place to play, and understandably with something like Meetup, if you're going to have people show up who you don't know.
Yeah.
You probably, it's understandable. You wouldn't want to set up your house. And we learned that a lot of gaming now goes on in these comic book stores and these gaming stores. And so what we did was we went to several different local ones looking for what we felt was the best store. Basically looking for which one has, the most tables, seems the most accommodating. And we finally decided, it was pretty clear. We went to one which is terrible. And I'm not going to mention the store. Huh? I'm not going to mention the store. But it was terrible because it was like a lunchroom. There was 1 billion tables, and they were all filled up with people, kids playing all these new games, and there was just very little room. It was very hard to hear. And then we went to another one, and it was. There was a lot of stuff around the tables, and you were kind of cramped. And then the last one we went, it sounded like Goldilocks. And then the last one
was just
right, it had wide open, it was open. It's kind of like looking for a good place to go skiing. Wide open runs, there weren't a lot of people around. There's big open tables. It wasn't that noisy, and that's what we decided on. And we just set the game, but it is work. Because you're going to have turnover. You're going to have no-shows. You can't get upset about no-shows. You're going to have people just disappear. You will have people play for 3 months, and then they never show up again, and they don't respond, and they're just gone. And that's just the way things are. But it's a lot of work to keep it going.
Okay, so you first started looking for a place, and then you put the ad on. So is that the ad that you saw, Bob?
I think so.
I know which one you saw.
I was at a store. I had started 5E. Sorry. And
we have a therapy group.
I know.
Yeah.
I have to.
We
join.
have 5E. It's over there. It's
Yeah.
part of the. It's part of the
Part
collection.
of the
Part of the
collection.
family. It's part of the family. It's okay.
This is not my
And
house.
was not having didn't have a great time, and was looking around. I think more because of my brain going back and forth between the rule sets and the DM, of course. So I was walking around the store, and somebody said, "Well, there's another store, and I should go look at that." So I went and looked at that, and I went over, and there was the little piece of paper hanging off the rack. So I quickly took out my phone because I knew I would never remember it, and I took a picture of it and thought, "Wow, original D, I could do that," and I guess that's the flyer I saw that got me there, and then showed up, and again, the biggest thing I realized, I got all the books for 5E, and got everything together and had all these ideas to DM and realized I have nobody to play with. I have all this stuff to do, and there's nobody, so that was the thing, is that you want to play and there's nobody to play with, and that was the thing. So that was great that I accidentally happened to literally almost trip over it, and it was like, oh wow, D&D, I can do that. So.
Right. So it's not original. So
Right.
and again, for me growing up, this was the original. Basically, I had a rough understanding of that basic, but I didn't really understand until years later that there was an original band, Dungeons and Dragons. But so, and we should definitely shout out Campus Cards and Games 2 in Winter Park is where we play, and I'll put them in the link. So if you're there, because I think one of the things you want to do is support your local store. Even though in spite of the internet, and there's a lot of features, and actually Bob and I were talking, and hopefully you can recount your story of you started a game completely online and how to set up a group. So
Yes.
I'll ask you that in just a second, but you need to support these stores just like any retail. In our case, the store is set up. There's a back room, there's a front room, and then there's a couple of private rooms where you can rent them. And we're fortunately of means enough where spending $20 to have your own private room, so you're not listening to the cacophony of sound of like in some other places where they have large rooms, makes a huge difference. It's night and day. So I certainly, my first non-spellcasted suggestion would be support your local areas, even if it's $1 more for the figurine or 80 cents more for a dice or a couple of bucks more for a book, because you're basically they're giving you a way to play in a open quotes safe space, you know, because you're not having to bring people into your house. So Bob, we were talking about your group, because it's very interesting how you went another route. Obviously Dan was looking for local players and kind of started that way and then used the internet. Tell us how you got your group going.
Well, again, I had started and had all this thing and realized I didn't have any players, and was looking online on a site, and all of a sudden I ran across something that said this person posted that they wanted to play but didn't have anybody to play with, didn't know how to roll up a character, could anybody help them roll up a character? So of course I was like, well, I can help with that, you know. So started talking to this person, and she was very interested and had a very specific what she wanted to do. So we walked through the whole character creation thing, and here I go with the hands.
That's
what we do.
It happens.
In radio,
it's the New York, in me.
That's that New York.
So we set it all up, and she had this character, and that was great. And then she goes, well, if I can, you know, now that I have a character, can we play? And I'm like, okay, yeah, you know, I can DM, and you know, in talking, discovered she was 6 hours ahead of me in Germany.
And she's German, apparently.
And she's German, and English is her second.
And German.
Go figure how that works.
It's craziness. And she doesn't speak English. You told me she doesn't speak English. I was like, well, it's not her first language.
No, actually, she speaks English better than most people I know.
Okay.
It's not her primary language. It's not her first language.
Right.
Yeah. So every once in a while we have to go back and forth. Like what was the big one? Oh, Tinderbox. We were talking about having a Tinderbox, and she was like, okay, I need an explanation, and that happens every once in a while. But like I said, so
was that Flamin' Striking books?
I'm actually it doesn't. Actually, the translation comes out Tinderbox, which still didn't mean anything to her. So we still
just because those they make
these
words up.
They make up the words in German, but
I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, she's tried to teach me some German, and that hasn't worked out real well. So she's like, I'm like, okay, well, you know, we should have more than one person. And she's like, okay, well, you know, if I get people, will you DM? And I'm like, well, I don't know how we're going to do this, but sure, you know. So 4 days later, she's, you know, sending me a text message going, I got 4 other players. There's a little bit of an issue. One of them's in Texas. I'm in Germany. You're in Florida. And then we had 2 other. Oh, one of them's in Ontario. And then we had 2 other people at that point. One was in England. He didn't last very long, and so it was like, oh, so the internet is great for getting people together, but then it adds extra dimensions of how do you time a game where you have 6 different time zones. You know, you're across 6 different time zones. So noon for me is 6 o'clock her time, and it was like, okay, well, you know, that's been our biggest problem, other than I have to work this weekend and stuff like that we never ran into when we were 13. You know,
it's hard agreeing on a time when you're within the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
across the globe.
Yeah, so that's actually nobody had ever played before. Actually, the group we created was called Bob and His Beginners, and we've recently changed the name to Bob and His Intermediates because they feel that they graduated from some basics.
So you did an evaluation of that.
Actually, no. She just changed the name of the group and then told us she was changing it, which was fine because I consider it her group. But you know, so the biggest thing has been being able to meet on a consistent basis, and that's just life now.
Is this a phone?
No, actually, that's my tablet.
Okay.
This is
my God.
Yeah,
you're getting big.
Yeah,
I know people can't see you only if you're watching.
If you're
I'm
watching,
like, what?
yeah.
Hello? It's been in your pocket. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Actually, you're not the first person to have asked me that this week.
Because they are getting bigger.
They are getting bigger.
I think it's supposed to get smaller. Whatever.
But they did.
Yeah.
But anyway, but what I did is I brought the tablet because this has been the biggest plus, because what we do is we communicate by Skype.
Mm-hmm.
So we all have, well, one of my users doesn't have the Texas player lost all of his electronics in I forget what it was. Something happened and everything went dead. Mm-hmm. And so the only thing he has is his phone. but he's been able to stay in the group because we're not on 6 different. I know a lot of people that I talk to who play online are on. I'm gonna Roll20 or
We'll talk about the different.
all the different places. The fact that we only use Skype, it has allowed him to stay on because he couldn't be on multiple locations at the same time. We kind of do an on your honor process for dice rolling. I remind everybody that if you suddenly roll 6 19s in a row plus a 20, I'm gonna want to start seeing these things on camera. But every once in a while you hear 6 4 1. Mm-hmm. So the group has been I actually ended up with a really good group of people, and that goes back to the you're not inviting these people into your home because you don't know them and stuff like that, and you like anything on the internet, you don't use last names and you don't use identifiable stuff, and then slowly over time.
So we shouldn't say Bob Jones, right?
Right, no.
Mm-hmm. And you live at 2268, yeah, exactly.
Right, or Dan Gormansky.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, because there's so many of them.
You're infamous though.
Am I?
People were calling you out at GaryCon.
That's true.
Really?
Yeah, so I was at GaryCon. I was talking to these guys. I'd gone into this game with them, a real fun game, and they came by my table, and I talked to them, and they saw my name tag. They go, "You're Dan Gormansky?" And I'm thinking to myself, "Oh my gosh, it's the podcast! I'm becoming famous. They know the podcast."
That's cool.
And I'm like, "Yes, I'm Dan Gormansky." They're like, "Oh," I'm like, "Yeah. How do you know Dan Gormansky?" And they're like, "Oh, Vic Dorso in his game here, he had a character named Dan Gormansky." So this guy's wah-wah. So it wasn't, so it wasn't.
But we are known in GaryCon. So, yeah.
So anyway, but that's how it's gone. And again, the biggest problem we have now is, are we going to play this week? So I'm usually the leader of the thing, and I send out the email to the group on Tuesday or the kick that says, okay, everybody check your calendars. We've kind of come down to it's either a Saturday or a Sunday because of the time difference. And then, does it work this week? And then if not, we just push it off till, okay, well, we'll start this process again next week.
Yeah, and I think, so for me, my background is, again, I had gone in hiatus for a number of years, and when my children started getting old enough where they could play, I pulled out some of the games, and probably on and off for a number of years, probably like the first time was in 2002 or 3, when my now older children were about 9 or 10 and had limited things. They had some sample starter sets. I still have some of them that made it a little quicker to play a game. But then as my kids got older and a bit more interest, eventually I started saying, well, there's got to be a group around here. And this was like 2 months after you had started the group, because I think I started in July. And I just typed in games, and it eventually led me to Meetup, and then I'm like, oh, there's a place right here. And so there are people out there, and you just need to get together. And my internet experience is, some of my original people I played with was my family. I have a cousin who lives in St. Pete. My oldest son lives in West Florida as well. And want to play with them. So because again, it's an opportunity for your family if they're used to doing that. So my son and I stay here, and actually this is the Studio B, and so we play in here, and we'll do Skype, and we'll use Roll20, which is a virtual tabletop. So Roll20, Fantasy Grounds, there's other ones like that. D&D Beyond, thank you. Those are what are called fantasy virtual tabletops, and what they allow you to do is simulate the activities that you would have in a tabletop, and depending on how much effort and work you want to put into it,
and money.
There's money.
Yeah.
Some are free,
Right.
and some are very expensive, but they also provide you a lot of tools to streamline and present the material. You don't have to do as much prep work because all these artwork and the modules and all the pre-things are in there, and you can share it. So we use a combination of a virtual tabletop and Skype, and we would play. We don't play as much as we used to, just because same thing for time constraint. Even though we're in the same time zone, schedules are always difficult to that. So, so Dan, you've been running this group for close to 2 years, and Bob's run it. So what works? What has been a thing that you felt? And I'll start with Bob. What are the things that you were So actually very pleased at how this thing is working.
Again, I think it goes back to I lucked out with the people that Leah recruited. Really want to play, and are very much based on the way we play, are very much theater of the mind people, which is going back to the 80s, the only thing we had. So that's my experience as a player and a dungeon master is, you know, you create it in the brain, and that's the only thing you have because you didn't have all the tech that you have now. So I've gotten very lucky there that they're all of a similar process.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So Dan, what about you?
Well, I think what surprised me is the amount of players that are out there that we've been able to get who want to play first edition. I mean, we were just talking about it before the podcast here, how you had 12 players last night, right, in your game, which is an enormous, right? Yeah. Exactly, an enormous amount.
I'm rubbing my head only because I'm shocked. I'm like, why are people showing up this many?
Well, I know, but that's a whole other
Well, well, again, because like you know, it's managed chaos. We had guest people. We had someone with their spouse, someone with their son. So right, I feel like a shelter. I feel like the shelter, the rescue for D&D players. Oh, you have someone? Come on! No, I can't turn anyone away.
My cousin's in town. Can you? Right. Oh, sure. You know, I got family.
Well, I think the key there is that the deal is that with the turnover, like you said, you know, there's none of the original players other than you and Edward left.
Yeah.
With it.
Oh, we're only sort of left.
Right. Well.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the whole process of come on, you know, come one, come all, because that way as people rotate through, I guess the biggest concern I have with my group is that, you know, 1 or 2 people, and there's only 5 total, including myself, are going to come back one day and say, well, you know, I can't play anymore, and we're in the middle of, and I'll say it, I had created my own adventure and thought it was going to take, I think I told you, I thought that was going to take like 6 or 7 hours. We celebrated our first anniversary in February, and we're still in the dungeon. Okay, of the first adventure that I thought was going to take, you know.
Right.
So the biggest concern is if I had turnover, I don't have the ability to say, you suddenly wake up in the city, or you know, you know, you wake up and it was a dream kind of thing, or all of the bad cliches that we've all, you know, run into for adding new people.
Yeah, I had to do that yesterday.
And there's no, with my adventure, there's no way to do that. So I'm really trying to hope that we get to the end of it where we can go back to a town, because I have other people who want to play, but I haven't been able to add them.
Well, and you know, it comes down to, no, it's fine. I think, because that's one of the things that's a challenge. But so Dan, what works from your perspective? What did you were surprised how well it worked? You know, starting your group in.
Yeah, well, and just to go back to, you know, what I was most surprised with was how easy it was to find players who wanted to play first edition. Now, as I mentioned, it was also hard work, so it's a little bit of both. You got to put the effort into it. So what I would recommend for people who want to play first edition, don't think, oh, no one plays first edition anymore, I'll never have a group, I might as well go to 5th. Look, if you want to play 5th, that's great, go for it. But if you really have your heart set on playing first edition, I suggest that you consider starting a meetup group, then, you know, call it first edition, put first edition in the name.
Somewhere in the title.
In the title, because you don't want to be too vague about it. I wouldn't just call it, you know, Fargo role-playing group. Right.
Like that, yeah.
If you really care about first edition, put first edition in the title. You've got a bunch of categories that you can pick from to label your group. And I think you can do as many as you want. We have like 30 or something.
Like that, yeah.
I've even made up some. You can make up some. I put like old school Renaissance, old school revival in there. And so when people search for it, if you have that label, then your group will pop up. So I would just recommend.
You're fine.
Okay.
I can see.
Start a first edition. Start a meetup site. I mean, I think you can cancel at any time, right? I mean, it's not like these old cell phone plans. I think you can probably cancel at any time. Start a meetup group. Put first edition in the title. I would set a game. I mean, I'm repeating a lot of things I've already said. Set a game. Set it a month out. Don't just say, oh, I'm not a big fan of, well, I'll wait till I've got enough people and we'll talk about it, and then we'll like maybe schedule a session to schedule a session. I think you just, okay, a month from now, We're gonna run a game. Look, the reality is, if you want to start a first edition group and you don't have anyone around that you know of, I think you're gonna have to DM at first. It's just, I mean, that's what that's what we did.
Right.
I mean, I wasn't thrilled about it, but I'm like, you know, it would be sort of like, I'm not going to invite myself over to somebody else's house for them to cook dinner, right? If I'm going to have a party, I need to basically host the thing. And so we said, month out, we said, okay, we got a game, and that's what I would do. And what I was, and as I mentioned, you know, go to other meetup sites and look for gaming sites and look for players and send them. I mean, I can tell you, I would spend upwards of several hours in a day just sending, you know, messages to people on other Orlando gaming sites saying, hey, you interested in playing first edition, and with a link. And so it does take that, it does take effort in that respect, but if you put in that effort, I think you'd be surprised probably at how many people end up being interested. Now I know we're in Orlando, so you know we have a fairly large population.
Right.
I understand Fargo's going to be a little bit more difficult, for example, but we've now. I mean, you've got 12, 13 players. I mean, if everyone shows up, you like get 13 players showing up.
Right.
We have another group being run by John, which, you know, and so that's 2 groups. At one point in time, we had 3 groups. Now I know that we've got many players that are playing in multiple groups. But that's still, I think that's a lot of people within just, when you think about it, within just not even 2 years. I mean, I think a year in, we had 3 separate groups being going. So
ebbs and flows, but we, you know, there's probably a core, probably in our case, 12 to 20 people who would actively play consistently with the groups we have, and I would say there's probably at least 10 or 20 more who are not playing because of the things we talked about. The schedule is bad, or and that's typically the thing, you know.
Yeah.
Because again, the DM starts it all. I'm going to play on Thursday. Well, I can't play Thursday, so you know, as soon as you say something, it eliminates it, or the frequency of it. Someone wants to play weekly, and the DM only wants to play monthly. The DM wants to play every other week. Someone can only go monthly, and so it's. I think that's, you know, that's what doesn't work is the same challenges that normal groups have, whether it's your friends or whatever. As people have gotten older, they're harder to wrangle because they have other things. So let's switch into what doesn't. We did mention the fact that you get a lot of turnover. Folks may not be as invested because there's a lot of try before you buy kind of things, which is fine too. So you have to be willing to deal with a whole wide. Even though they're first edition, you think they have this kind of, they know what they're getting. We've had a number of people who are new, and some of them are, you know, or they haven't played in a while, and they had their version of play that they remember. So Bob, you know, what are you mentioned about the time zones because you have an international thing. What are the, have you had technical challenges? And you mentioned, you know, kind of keeping it at a very base level, but you've tried other things, and what are the pros and cons to that?
One of the biggest things is to always be, I mean, for doing anything like that, you want to always be there a couple minutes early to make sure everybody's audio is working, everybody's video is working, you know, things like that. Because we've had that problem where, you know, the person next door, one of the players, suddenly steals all the bandwidth, and they've done that. We've gone down to a point where the DM is usually the only person on camera at all times. And everybody else listens, so to save bandwidth for some of the players and things like that.
So they have to share
Well, no, it seems to be that if more than 2 or 3 of us are running video at the same time, so especially the guy with his cell phone, he just kind of disappears and stuff.
Because he's having to send and transmit so much. Gotcha.
So you have to, at least that's my assumption, kind of not being able to troubleshoot his equipment, but
yeah, please fly to Texas and we'll come.
Yes, exactly. You know, if he wants to fly me to Texas, I'll be more than happy to reset up his computers. But that was the biggest one, getting the audio right. Every once in a while, you know, you get the fun things where somebody's dog or somebody's kid or somebody's spouse, you know, walks through not realizing everyone's on camera, you know, that kind of thing. So that's interesting. That was nothing I'd ever run into before playing around a table. You know, you don't normally have the cat walk across. But I mean, that's normal stuff.
You could have never wargamed. If you play a war game,
that's
the cat
true.
will
Yeah,
jump on the
risk.
table.
Yeah, risk where they knock over the board.
Or
Yeah.
your mother will say, yeah, it's dinner time.
Dinner
You just set up all the things.
Yeah, that was the problem I had with wargaming. Is by the time I'd set up all of the starting counters, it was like 3 hours. I was done.
And you couldn't take pictures of it. I mean, it wasn't
No, back
easy to
then,
take
you're right.
pictures
Now you
back
can
then.
take
You had to
pictures,
send it
yeah.
off and have it.
Yeah.
You know, God, anyway. So yeah, that's been the thing, is that you have to leave time for, you know, technical things. One of my players in particular is you know, we said it was 1 o'clock. It's 1 o'clock. We should be playing. Okay.
He's on Greek time, right?
Yeah, he's very much, and there's nothing wrong with it. He keeps us focused really well, because of course when we only get to talk every 2 or 3 weeks as a group, you know, how's everybody doing? How's everybody's dogs and family and stuff like that? And you get pulled away from gaming, even though they love, in my humble, non-biased opinion, even though they love my DMing and my game, we still get pulled off.
Clearly, people are going
Stuff
out
like
of
that.
time zones. They're like,
Yeah.
I could go to the Bach festival. No, I'm
Yeah.
sitting with Bob
Right.
Yeah.
I could be sleeping.
on a scratchy thing.
Actually, it's funny you said that, because I was telling James before that one of the players works nights, so every once in a while he'll pop in, and you know, he'll have a bigger coffee pot in front of him than I do now, and he'll say, I haven't been to sleep in 17 hours, so if you hear snoring from my end, it somebody send and wake me up, because he's not only is he in a different time zone, but he's on a different schedule, but he wants to play, boy. When he gets into his dwarf character, watch out.
So, and I think there's a internet term AFK, which is something that you have to deal with, unlike the table, meaning away from keyboard. It reminds me when I played with my relatives and other folks through the online process. That's kind of like watching a movie at home versus going to the theater. When you're at the theater, the movie's starting. It doesn't stop for you. Here, I want to go to the bathroom. I got to make popcorn, and I got to do this, and I got to do that, and you're running around, and the 2-hour movie becomes a 3.5-hour movie because the phone rings and you pick it up. I'll just be 5 minutes, and then you pause it. And that's what happens. So you've got, when you multiply players, and they're in their own house. And all of a sudden you look up. That's why I prefer having a camera, because you'll be like, okay, Joe, what do you do? Joe, you there? We have no idea.
Right.
And it's interesting because they're staring at their webcam. So if you watch them, they're basically staring at you. You're like, are they moving? Is the internet working?
I was gonna say, and that's when you realized you lost the feed, and that's a picture from 15 minutes ago.
Right. They haven't been with you for 15 minutes, but you see this picture of them.
No, I thought it was like they'd put the cardboard cutout.
Well,
like
basically
go do
it's the
something
same,
else, but okay.
Well, they say, I'll be right back, and
Yeah.
they disappear.
Yeah, right.
So that accessibility, and I think that bleeds into the game where we talk about the commitment level. Is that same thing? People don't have. I think most people are very courteous. They'll let people know, and then life happens. The day before. But that makes it a challenge when
15 minutes before.
Yeah, or they don't show up. Especially if the people I have now, all cast of thousands, they will usually let me know if they're not going to be there. But
You wish someone wouldn't show up.
well, yeah,
Okay.
one didn't, and because I would have had 13 players, and it's just then it becomes unpleasant for I don't really mind that it's as long as everyone's kind of on the same page and you keep them moving. We'll talk about how to manage large groups, but that's the issue. If you had 5 players scheduled, and they're not all consistent, you may lose 2, and all of a sudden you got 2 players or 3 players for that session, and then it's hard because if they're not your friends yet, they're there to play Dungeons and Dragons. If it was a situation where your friends were playing, let's say there's 2 others, they didn't show up, we'd be like, oh, well, let's play something else. We could play Catan or play some other board game or roll something else. We would, because we wanted to spend time with each other. If they're strangers, they came to show up for that, and they don't have enough people there. So, to me, that's part of the things that what doesn't work is, you're not going to get that same level of, at least initially. It's more like Adventurers League or these kind of pickup games that you do, which is a way to start. It kind of get your fix of fantasy role playing by starting with, hey, you're starting a group, you recruited some players, they'll wash out, and I think the disadvantage I have is I still am in that shelter mode where I'm rescuing people from their loneliness of playing. But now we have a core group of probably 6 or 7 players who I think they're ready to take it to the next level of as far as trying to build characters and a story, which is hard to do when every other session you may pop up with 3 or 4 people that variably show up. So we had someone's friend came and someone who was playing in Tom was playing your game, but your game's on hiatus till John's thing. So he's basically, he just shows up and will play any player, any character that he's the utility player.
Nice.
So he's like, okay, we're playing this, and I had to teleport people in.
I'm the gnome illusionist again.
That's right.
Yeah, here's the gnome illusion. I was just gonna go there.
Fast and the arrows.
So, and one of the guys was captured, so we had to pick up a character. So go ahead, Bob.
Actually, I'm sorry, and that was funny because the first game that I showed up, I actually showed up for the other game, and played a character of someone who couldn't show up that day. So, because I hadn't been to a game yet and stuff like that. So, and actually, it's funny, but that's how I got in, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna work, and went out and got the books and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's very fair for new people. That's one of the things I've started to do. Instead of them going through the effort, and it's an effort. We'll talk about host duties. We talk a little about it. But obviously, one of the host duties is introducing new players and shepherding them. And there's work to do, especially if they're coming from zero background. We have someone in John's group who's going to play. Hopefully, she'll show up, which would be awesome. She's never played, so John can't just sit there and go, all right, here's this tome. I'm holding the player's handbook.
Here's the player's handbook.
Go figure it out. You have to shepherd them through it, and it's whether it's first edition or fifth edition, they try to make it simple. But this idea of taking a concept, if they have one, and personifying it and having a character that's viable is a challenge. So,
and actually, I'm sorry, I have 2 other people who I'm just starting off, and I came up with the first question I'm going to ask every player from now on is, what character from whatever do you see yourself playing? Do you see yourself as Aragorn? Do you see yourself as somebody else? And I actually had somebody come up to me the other day when I asked the question, and she said Shrek, and I was like, whoa, because no one's ever,
I see myself as George Costanza from.
Yeah, right.
Can I
So
make
what
up that
would
character?
What would George be?
We could have a whole podcast on
Well,
that.
that's right. What would be the
Well,
Seinfeld adventuring?
Well, we had Doug played a half ogre, so that's
Yes,
correct,
that's
right?
true,
So their
yeah.
half ogre was a character class that was
That was
introduced
when the
for-
slippery slope of when you just started to allow, and I'm still reaping the benefits of that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
because you put a half ogre into a first level adventure.
Right.
It's cleaning up. I mean, yeah,
He
you
was
guys
the
were
tank.
destroying.
He was the
yeah,
tank,
it
yeah.
was. Yeah, I mean, it had like 26 hit points or something. at
Yeah,
first
it was
level.
crazy.
It was yeah.
Yeah, it's
But anyway, yeah, that's the question I've found that I'm going to ask every new player when they come in. Who do you imagine yourself to be? Harry Potter, Gandalf, whatever it is, so that you can kind of guide them towards, you don't want somebody who sees themselves as Harry Potter end up looking as a half ogre tank, because it's not going to be what they're looking for in a game.
So I think that's where, that's the beauty and advantage and disadvantages of having a first edition group is you kind of limit yourself to things. And if you're in an area where you don't have a lot of people and you open up, well, then you're getting a wide group of people, and so your host duties and commitments escalate. You're going to have to help people who have different experiences, or you have the flip side. Hey, Bob, I want to be in your game, and I want to run Shelgarth. And you're like, who's Shelgarth? Well, he's the same guy. He's the half-elf, half-drow, half-elf, half-tiefling, gunslinger, assassin, rogue.
Right. Lawful evil.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's moody.
And you're
doesn't talk
sitting
to
there
anyone else.
going, how am I going to get this into my group?
And this is, I got this great concept, and it's this, and it's like we're playing first edition Dungeons and Dragons, or whatever. You're playing Call of Cthulhu, and I want to be, Sir Galahad, or whatever the case may be. So you've got, you have those DM issues, but you don't have the prep time because they're not your friends to deal with this. All of a sudden, people show up. We had a situation, I think, a few months ago, Where one guy said he was showing up and he brought 2 friends, and it's all of a sudden, it's 15 minutes before, and there's 3 of them there. I'm like, okay.
What do I do now?
Yeah. So you're like, okay, roll dice, and definitely what you want to do as a host is if you've got, hopefully if you've been playing for a while, you use the other players and go, all right, Joe and Bob, you help those 3 get set up because I'm trying to get the rest of it. So we talked about helping new players. You have to actively recruit. That's part of this rescue thing I have is, we started, when I started with you, we had like 7 or 8 players consistently. Then by the time I took over, there was Nick, Lane, and myself with my son. We were down to 4.
Yeah.
And now we're back up to 12. It's just because life happens. People come and go, and if you don't have enough players, you're going to fall by the wayside. You're going to say something about it.
I was going to say that's become the unofficial motto of the Skype group is life is what, to quote John Lennon, life is what happens while you're busy making other plans.
Yeah.
Because it's again, every Monday or Tuesday, it's like, okay, who's going to be able to play this week? That kind of thing.
And let me say, and so, we used to have a DM named Sean, and I remember, we were talking back in the early days of the Grognards Guild, and we basically agreed that we should never turn away a player. So you should never, I think if you're gonna try to form a group, and let's say you only want to have 5 players, and you have 5 players, and 2 more people want to join, I think we would agree, would we not? Because I know, James, we talked about this too, and you're in agreement with this, is you let them join. Because since there's going to be attrition, you're going to want that pattern. Now, I know, you've got a lot of players right now,
Right.
but you've been down to 3.
Right, exactly.
And so there might be a point in time where you're thrilled that you had 13 because you had some cushion if people leave. So we've always had the position is, I don't think we've ever said to anybody, no, the group is full. I mean, I know you say things like on the site, like this group is full,
Right.
Message me, but I don't know, have you ever, I've never,
I
don't know
yeah,
if you've ever
yeah.
said,
At this
no.
point, I haven't turned anyone, though if anyone else asked, I would be like, do you know John's starting a game on Saturday?
Well, that's right, that's fair. So you're not really turning them away, it's just you're finding
You're
a
just
group,
kind of shepherding
space
them
for
to a different group.
But and that's what, part of that, if you're, I've kind of helping Dan and Ed and everyone else and John be not only the host of my game, but trying to help the group out. So I don't know if Dan still does it, but I know for a long time, when you had a new recruit, you would send someone who would join the group, you would send a message to them, and because there may be DMs who want to play. Because part of it is I like playing and I like DMing, and right now I'm only DMing. I'm glad that John's playing or DMing because I'll play with him. So I think what helps with that is you got to actively group. You got to schedule. I think initially you can be very flexible, but if you want a group to be consistent, and if that's what you're looking for, you have to. If you're the DM, you have to schedule. You have to. I'm going to do it every 2 weeks because people got to put it on their calendar. I think if you try to just do it whenever you're available, your group's going to fall apart. And unless you have a huge group, and we'll talk about different ways of campaigns, but. You gotta have, we play every other week. Some of my players would like to play weekly, some of them don't want to play weekly, they kind of pop in and out. But you as the DM, as the host, first action, then you gotta find a place or you have to do it online. And you're the one who has to make sure the Skype issues are figured out. And if you're using Roll20, how to set up the account and to teach people all that. So it is a lot of work initially to set up. So part of that then is you have to enjoy being the dungeon master. You have to run a game that you want to play, and so that's we'll talk about that. So anything about host duties that we missed as far as any other
No, I think
suggestions?
you need to be, if you do play at a local gaming shop, you do need to be prepared for times where you show up and there's no tables. Huh?
Right. Then go ahead. That's one I remember that. Yeah. It could be no tables, right? We had times where we had or the place was closed because the air conditioning didn't work or something. Didn't we have to go?
So you do want to be aware of
have
other
a backup
gaming
plan.
stores in the area. It doesn't happen often, but there are occasions in which you show up and they're having the place we game at. I remember one time they had a Pokemon tournament or something. They didn't know it was gonna. It was sort of like a flash mob.
Yeah.
The Pokemon tournament. It wasn't the gaming store's fault.
Roaming bands of Pokemon
Yes.
players,
Right.
and then they just crash the place.
Yeah, they did, and we had not reserved a table on that occasion, and in the center room, and so yeah, so you do want to be prepared for stuff like that. So as the host, you do have that responsibility for making sure that you're going to have room at the gaming store.
And there's organized play, in other editions. So again, if you're really not desperate, I don't want to say it that way, but if you want to play, there's organized play. Now, as a host, one of the other things that you have that is a little more, makes it a little more nuanced. Again, if your position is all you want to come to the table can play, well, now you have to deal with whoever comes to the table, and there's personality conflicts. And so if you've heard the forming, norming, storming, performing kind of transition of teams, that is the downside of having this, because you're constantly churning through getting your group stable. And most people, I have very patient folks. They know I'm going to let people in, and we deal with a lot of idiosyncrasies of folks. But if it's and I'm fortunate, I've not had a situation where longtime players or have had an issue with new time players or something that rose up. And you better be prepared, because even though it should be the table deals with personality issues or the people, unfortunately you're the host, and you are the one who has to at least, and if you feel there's a problem, you need to get the group involved. I know one of our other DMs was starting to have some issues with some folks, and he had to kind of tamp it down, and then you're like, why am I doing this? I'm playing.
I'm doing this for fun. Why?
HR manager / event coordinator. So have you had any of those challenges, Bob, in this group or any other groups that when you have this kind of varied attendance?
No, I think a lot of it has been with the what I call my in real life game with you guys has been, we have a lot of different personalities, and we have it's like, this never would have happened back in the day, because, but you have to be, somebody's going to walk in and want to be a chaotic evil assassin, and how do you integrate that into a group that plays lawful? Dan, you and I have had a discussion about, lawful good isn't lawful stupid, and how difficult it is to play a true lawful good character. And then the first game we were playing, we kept ending up with all these people who were surrendering, and nobody knew what to do with them. It was like, well, and so it comes down to different types of play, and sometimes when you get to different types of play, you get different points. You have the player who plays for the party. Okay, the party is the most important, but it would be nice if my player succeeded. And then you have the players who, I don't really give anything about the party. I need to get the next level. Okay.
What are you saying, Bob?
And I think
what are you saying about me?
Nothing.
Right here. You can
I'm staring right at him.
Right, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna leave.
Just say it.
That's it. I'm done. I'm out of here. But you just have to be aware that it happens and it falls back to the DM. But I think the other players too, to be aware that you're going to run into, you're not friends in the outside world, or
at least initially, right?
Right. You're going to have different people and different play styles and different what do they want to get out of it, and sometimes that runs into conflict.
And you have most people, again, I don't want to scare anyone off, because again, you have an international group that you like each other, and we've met a lot of people. I mean, we've had we've gotten together offline. We've have become closer. So you meet a lot of people who have similar interests. It's a great thing. But you do need to be prepared for that, and if you have a certain background, what do? You make up rules, and you set them up. So I set up rules for people. Mm-hmm. This is the kind of game we're going to play.
Right.
We're not going to have evil parties unless everyone agrees to have an evil party, which is fine. And then play paranoia, which, by the way, we're going to do some kind of paranoia.
Really?
Yes.
I always wanted to play paranoia.
Okay, well,
I never played, but
we will.
I'm there.
We will bring you back, because we're going to do. I don't know if it'll be here or something, because one of the things we're going to do at GROGTALK, shameless plug, is play old school games. We're not just doing first edition, and so I think Dan's looking at running maybe Call of Cthulhu or something like that. I'm gonna probably run Paranoia. So I need to start getting, and our tournament's coming up in June, Yeah, I don't. What happens if you start insane? I mean, because basically,
Well, that's true.
do you get better?
That would be too much like real life.
Right.
So,
Do
yeah.
you get normaler as you as you see the horrors? of
Someone
it?
would have to tell me what normal looks like.
Right.
So, yeah.
So I think having rules of conduct and letting people understand those rules of conduct, and and part of the things I say is you can be mad at the character, you can't be mad at the player.
Right.
And that's hard to do. I
Yeah.
think one of my challenges is, I would get up early for work. I mean, I like playing. I play Friday night so I can have my entire weekend. But after I get up at 5:30 in the morning and I got to be on at 6:30 to 11. It's easy. And depending on the type of players you have some players will kind of go with the flow, and other ones would be like, yeah, on page 27. I do recall it said I get a plus 2.5% increase on that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember seeing that. That may be another edition. No, I'm pretty sure we should stop everything now. I have 12 players or whatever. And I'm as guilty of that too. I'll be like, no, that's not how it works. And instead of just ruling it, so, and again, that's where that very thing is. And if you're not in the right frame of mind, sometimes you can go down the bad rabbit hole, and you just have to kind of remind yourself this is a game.
We're supposed to be having fun
With
here.
virtual things. I think that's where, as the host, you have to be, as the DM. I mean, these are similar things you'd have with a group, but again, a lot of that is dissipated because they're your friends. You know these folks, whereas here you should keep it as rigorous and possible. And you just got to look at the table. You got to watch people and see what's going on. And if you have experience in teaching or small children or whatever, that's probably helpful. Okay, so some of the things I've mentioned, the West Marches type of style of play.
Did you say you have experience with small children?
That's right.
Sorry, I missed that one. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
So you going there, really?
No, I'm not. You said it.
See,
You said it, not me. You said it.
I am a father of 3 children.
Did I hear
They
that?
at some point were young.
I got one. No.
Makes me
Where I was
an
going was
experience.
what you were suggesting, that having experience with small children is helpful to being a DM.
Well, that's
Yeah.
what
That's where I was
What
going.
did you
I'm
think?
not-
I totally agree with that statement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I meant too.
Right. No, I wasn't. No, it was an age thing.
Oh,
It
okay.
was. It was. Did you just liken D&D players? Okay.
Yes.
I haven't.
Yes,
I,
like you're not even like
No.
you're not even like that's not no backing up. You're just like that's right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but that's part of the tabletop
No, I
experience. Is you're playing a character, and I think what people are bringing, no matter what we like, they're bringing their life, they're bringing their things to it, they're bringing and some of your best players are playing characters who are frail, and some of them get really wrapped into it. I've got folks who are making investments in the game, both personally and there's some emotional thing of that. And
If you think about it, though, back in the day, I mean, didn't we have all these issues back in playing the so in other words, you had issues with players back in the 80s and different personalities. I mean, really, if you think about it, it's not terribly different, is it? I mean,
yeah, but you self-selected with your friends. I mean, they were people you had some other bond with. In other words, if you weren't playing D&D, you would have done something else with them. Typically, it wasn't as casual bonding that you have here. They're all in your neighborhood, or they came from your school, or they had something that brought you together. Here, the game brings you together.
that is true. So the guy so if somebody shows up to my game now and they want to be, the half drow, evil, whatever, you're right. If I had known them in school and they were like, hey, can I join your group? I would have been like, I'm sorry, we're awful. That's right. Yeah, I would have been able to screen it. That's a good point. Screen it a little better. When you're doing something like Meetup, you really don't know what kind of player is going to show up. I agree with that. It's interesting. John had an interesting comment. He believed that the best players for a first edition group, if you're going to start one now, are people who played first edition back in the day. Now that doesn't mean that you can't have new players that are quite good, but that they understand the amount of rules, they understand the mortality rate for the player characters, and they're more okay with it. Whereas some of the players that have never played a role-playing game before might be a little surprised by some of that. So
1E is brutal. I mean, you're on your fourth version of your when we stopped
That's
playing.
right.
You were on the fourth version of
That's right.
Adolphus? No.
Altus.
Altus.
Altus
Thank
fixes.
you.
That's
Yeah,
right.
Altus
Auto
fixes.
fix, that's right.
Fourth, yeah.
Right. And I ran to a couple of
Yeah.
what was it, average, and
Yeah.
a couple of them where they were just going.
Which, by the way, I did show Dan that his that sounded terrible. I'm gonna back that up. There was an opportunity. Your average may have not been as average because Gary in the player's handbook said your character should be exceptional, should have 215. So you should have.
Oh, really? Okay.
Now, of course,
Hey,
obviously,
I think I managed to get through 3 playing sessions with a high of a 13.
yeah, I think which is technically slightly above average.
Right.
So you should be called
Well, yeah.
above average.
But anyway,
but yes.
he's gone now, so.
Yeah, it is there's mortality, but that's what makes that is that 1E style, and I think you can do that in any game. You just have to have people prepared for that kind of game.
And I'll do this real short. Is that my Skype players again? They're brand new to D&D. Most of them had role played before, and we had it happen. We had an NPC in the party who suddenly died. It was like he's gone, and it completely, I don't know if it shocked them or whatever, but it completely shut down the rest of that game. It was like the whole rest of the thing, everybody was like not saying anything. They were like, oh wow, we put all this time into this player, not a lot of game time, but all this and they could go, 2 rolls of a dice and they could be gone, and I think it shocked them. And I have to say, and this is something that you would never do because I'm okay with fudging things on occasion. I kind of had the creature attack the NPC for that very reason. Is that I figured that if somebody was going to go down, I wanted it to be one of the non-player characters.
Yeah.
And I know that's probably making you shift jitter a little
Yeah,
bit.
We've all done
I don't-
But
I
yeah,
don't have a
but
problem
no,
with
no.
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
because we've had that discussion.
I don't. Yeah, I know. I don't fudge rolls.
I don't think you should
Yeah.
fudge rolls, but what you can do is, and I try not to fudge rolls unless it's. And again, back to if I'm not in the right mind, if I'm in kind of when I'm not as on it, beginning of the game, you do something dumb, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
roll bad.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what makes it epic. The session before, and it wasn't a bad play. People were running around trying to do stuff, though they have a tendency to kind of drift. And when you got 12 players, they
I
tend
can't
to
imagine how you handle 12, but that's just
So they're all running around doing their thing. They had a plan. Of course, it fell apart, and one guy got stuck here, and there was a passageway they didn't realize, and all of a sudden, he, the 5th level fighter, is standing between a frost giant and 3 hill giants by himself.
Ooh,
And I'm thinking, okay, this is it.
he's toast.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Except, and I rolled it out front. 3, 3, 3,
Wow.
7. For 4 rounds, I think I hit him twice. And so that made it epic because
Yeah.
it's like, oh my God, he survived.
And they knew you weren't fudging it.
Right.
Turning the ghouls on the last
That's
game I
right.
played with.
That was epic.
Where John, one of the characters was paralyzed. We figured everybody was dead.
Yeah.
Was-
I
or
was
was about to be.
I was about to roll average the 4th right there.
Yeah, and all of a sudden on one roll of a die, and I think that's one of the best things about role-playing games is that I assume that 4 years from now, knock what passes for wood in the building. We're still going to be somebody going to bring up something, and it's going to be, well, remember the time when with the ghouls and they turned the ghouls on that one? Everybody was ready to turn up and that's what makes role-playing and epic.
Yeah, but that as a
thank
host,
you.
I think
Thank you.
what you don't want to do
I had a good time, right?
you don't want to when the first person that shows up, the first time they show up, they only have 3 hit points, and
Not that would ever happen.
we murdered them. They get murdered literally within an hour. They get knocked out. They get so they can't do anything for a week. And
Which they didn't realize was the rule. I mean, because it's rough when they don't realize that's the rule. So there's
Yeah.
good news and bad news.
Right.
The good news is
You're still alive.
conscious.
Yeah,
You're
you're
conscious.
alive.
The bad news is you
can't
can't
do
do
anything.
anything.
so
That sounds like fun.
yeah. So they I don't think they lasted the session. Which but part of being the host too is so there was a situation again through no fault of their own. The logical thing would be that these 2 creatures were going to attack one of the people, and it was one who's a fairly new player, who I think from a dynamic would be good to keep around. So I could have put the hammer down. They had a special attack that I could have said, yeah, they use their special attack,
And you're done.
No, I just had them attack
Oh.
normally. they had their normal attack. So
Okay.
so I didn't fudge the rolls. I actually rolled and it did hit them, but they had a thing. But I didn't put the full
Right.
full hammer down, which
Mhm.
I'm now because I am not keeping track of hit points anymore because with 12 players I cannot keep track
Yeah.
of that. So I really have no idea. I mean, I've killed a couple of them. Not I killed it. The dice have killed it because I'm like, I think he has 40 hit points. Oh, he only had 15 and he got hit for 27 or something.
Mhm.
So I think, that would be my suggestion if you're starting small and you're trying to build a group and you got to keep track of hit points, and then you can strategically say, yeah, the big bad guy is going to attack the big paladin, and
Conveniently, the person with the best armor class and the most hit points.
right, but then if they do dumb things like they pick up all the evil artifact of whatever,
And get struck dead right there.
right, then that
Not that would ever happen.
Right.
No one would ever do that.
or if there's a 14th level illusionist that's in the thing, and you're running out for your dear life, But anyway, so
We're reminiscing here.
that's right. But
Good
yeah,
times, good times.
Good time.
but that's what makes it
Total
memorable.
party
The-
kill.
the
Awesome.
Total party kill. Awesome.
the,
That was great.
the wipeouts, and but you have to read your group, and again, if you have a group that is looking for a story arc and they've invested in characters, I don't say you completely take it off the table, but again, you don't have to fudge a roll. You can kind of say, the ogre's going to use their normal attack as opposed to their super beat down thing like that, or you can always adjudicate like they had haste and they ran around this thing and there's a trap I'd set. The white dragon was sitting on the ledge and was going to blast them, but I gave them a higher saving throw. So now, if they're running around where there's giants and they have 10 hit points and they're running into a room without knowing, well then, sorry, that's not the brightest thing you should do. But I was pretty confident they were not going to be killed by the blast, but it still brought the whole, oh crap, we just moved into a place we shouldn't be in.
Yes.
So I think some of the other things, types of play, you mentioned theater of the mind, so you don't have to have a battle map and miniatures, and I think sometimes that is a style of play that you're going to have to decide early on. Are you going to do a tactical map? There are some players, especially old school, they kind of fall into both things. They want that semi-war game thing. We use actually we have a TV that has a plexiglass and we have a map and we use Roll20.
So I have to experience that one time because that just seems so awesome to me.
It's a lot of fun and it kind of makes the game. The part that its advantage is they don't have to map. Now, if you're one of these who wants really old school, where you want to confuse them with the mapping and where the map's all jacked up and they go around in circles, you don't get that. But it does provide a little flavor. And I have one of my players who's invested a lot of money in miniatures, and so he's just got all these cool miniatures. So why not use them? But then you get the tactical thing, and whereas Theater of Mind, you don't have that, and I think it's a less of a investment. That's why we keep the Crown Royal bag. On our day, this was our miniatures, right? The big bag of dice.
Yes.
And, you may have miniatures for your players, but the ogre was the pink 20.
Which dice floor are you?
Yeah.
How did people get the crown back in the day? Because people were like 12. How did you get a Crown Royal back?
Well, we lived in New York.
I was gonna say there's certain questions you don't want to answer.
Okay.
In New York, we had a little Spanish deli, we called it, where my mother would like, go get a pack of cigarettes, and then I'd walk up, I'm 8 years old, I need 2 packs of cigarettes and this, and they'd be like, here you go.
Hey,
Yeah.
Jimmy, how are you?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
You need some Crown Royal too?
I take some Crown Royal.
We had the Irish bar where as long as you weren't an idiot and pay, that was.
Yeah. Here's
They were
your
okay
cigarettes
with
and
that.
Crown Royal. Oh, Jimmy, and what are you playing? A dwarf now? What are you? What level are you? Oh, up to 3?
It's-
Incredible. I remember when you were just a first level dwarf.
First level dwarf. Now look
Yeah.
at you. Look at
Yeah.
your sprited what thing. So one of the things you could try, is the idea of a pickup game. Literally announce on the store's website or put a thing saying, we're going to play first edition, and just have pre-gen characters. Put yourself in the middle of the room and have a sign saying, because people have done this, and they just put a sign up
They've
saying,
done it on the street. Have you seen? There's a YouTube video.
No,
Have you seen that?
I've seen it. Yeah,
Where
I was
they do
gonna
it,
say.
it's on a sidewalk,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and they advertise, who wants to play D&D and
Mhm.
trying to get. So yeah, you can do that. Now, I think that would be hard though with first edition, because what are you going to get? This is the first edition game.
Right.
You're going to get people that are like, "What's first edition?"
Well, you would just say it's Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. Oh, and then you kind of.
Right.
spring it on them.
And that's why you give them a character, and obviously you can dumb it down or whatever, the entry level kind of thing, and then you can bring in the rules as needed.
And there's stories online and everything about, you know, playing with the kids and using Legos instead of, you know, if the kids are small, you know, you take a lot of, some of the violence leaves, but some of the stories are amazing. You said you had it at Gary Con, and I just saw it on
Trying to turn the goblin.
Right. And you know, the little kid talking to the goblin, going, "You don't have to be evil. You don't have to be evil. You can, you know, be nice. You know."
Yeah.
And things I never would have thought of that playing a rhythm. And I was like, "Oh, a goblin!"
Right.
You know? So it's
Why just stab them? No, you douse them with oil and you set them on fire.
Burn
And run
them.
into the
Well,
Well, first you get information out of them, then you
Yes.
burn them,
Burn
and
them.
then yeah.
Who is the evil party? That was the question. We're not
Yes.
evil. No, actually we are.
Yeah, we're the ones. Dungeons and Dragons is an entire thing of breaking and entering. Okay, the characters are basically breaking and entering into these people's into these monsters' houses and stealing their stuff.
No, it is true. And so I know, who really wants to play a campaign where there's like a heavy injection of law? I get it, okay? But you know,
Hey,
for example,
my cleric. Hey, you know.
well, you know, so for example, I mean, so I remember when you guys, I took you through the Tower of Xenopus, right? An old, it was
And that's
in
the
the old
home's
basic set.
basic module that comes with it, correct?
Exactly. And you guys ended up, you know, at the end in this tower, and you killed the baddie or whatever. And you're like, okay, we got a tower now.
Yes.
And I was like, well, wait a second. What do you mean you have a tower
and a
now?
gorilla. Yeah, and
There's going to be an executor of the estate. If there's no will, it'll be administrator. They're going to have this as an asset. There could be creditors. You don't just take
But
this
that's your
house,
background.
this tower.
That's your background. I never would have thought of those things.
I know. But
Obviously, because I wanted to take the
but-
tower. Yeah.
But to your point, if it's
Exactly.
breaking and entering, I mean,
Yes.
you know, especially if you are lawful,
Mm-hmm.
you're not, you know, you don't just
But
take
what is the
stuff.
law? Maybe it's the law of acquisition. Maybe it's the law of squatters' rights. You know,
Well, we were in the city-state, or the Invincible Overlord, and you know the Overlord is going to have some serious laws, right? I mean, it's not going to be chaos and just whatever. I mean, there's going to be...
Except where our party was involved.
Except your party.
There was
But
a
so
lot
I
of
guess,
chaos there.
but no, so I'm sorry, you remind, when you said it's a game of breaking and entering,
Yeah.
it does remind, it's basically, if I can push you down and take your treasure, that's what I will.
take your toys. But
Yeah.
and I think that's another way you can volunteer. You know, get involved. So if you're sitting on the sidelines, you're not playing. There's really no reason in this day and age to play. It may be a thing that may not be exactly what you were looking for, but you can get to there if you're willing to put the effort. Anything?
It may not be what you remember, but
Right. And
make new memories. That's,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's you know, expectation versus nostalgia kind of thing.
Mhm.
So we talked some about the tools that you can use to either run a game or do this. We talked about Meetup. You could use Facebook to start a group. You can use Discord. So you use Meetup.
Yeah, and there's, Facebook, we should mention
Reddit.
this. Yeah, and Facebook has like RPG Connection. I believe there are Facebook and like old school group finder. So if you're not on Facebook, so I'm only on Facebook really for these groups. I'm not on Facebook to, you know, to let people know where I've been on vacation, stuff like that. So
Are you going on vacation? Would you like to announce that? What your dates are, where you'll be, and
yeah, so you can come around my house.
anyone will be at your
I
house?
can break and
Yeah,
enter.
that's
I can
right.
break
You
and
can
enter.
break and enter,
There we go.
exactly.
We
I
can
don't
do
think so.
lifestyle Dungeons and Dragons.
No. So yeah, so Facebook. So if you're not on Facebook, I encourage you. You can sign up onto Facebook. You don't have to use your real name, and you can just use it then to just join some of these first edition pages, RPG Connection, Old School Group Finder, and you can just post, hey, I'm here in Orlando, Florida, looking for this game, and so that's another way too. But as I mentioned, I felt Meetup was the most effective of all the ways to find
Yeah,
it.
I mean, obviously you want to get to things where other people will see it. So,
Yeah, that's right.
and Google seems to pick up those things. You know, if we put AD&D in Google and Orlando, we're like one of the top things that comes up our Meetup. So congratulations on that. Now, running a game on the internet. So Bob, you've tried a number of tools. Maybe you can give us, you know, what you found was the best for your group, and you know, if there's other groups, what would be advanced? So what are the tools that you've used?
We use Roll20, mostly for dice. I tried to go in and set up all the tokens and the rooms and everything else, and it just got to be way too much. and we've used other dice rollers, and the biggest thing is, again, I got lucky in that the group is all theater of the mind, which is the only way that my group would work, because we don't have extra cameras pointing at a tactical map, and we don't have miniatures and things like that.
And you don't have to have there's basically professional people who play D&D. And again, I'm not a huge.
I wish I'd known that growing up.
That was a thing.
Yeah.
But at least I'd have to have more talent. Don't compare yourself to those kind of events.
Oh yeah.
You should charge that, don't you think? 13 players. If you charge $10 a pop, that's $130 a night.
If I wanted to reduce the group, if I charged $10 a pop, I would definitely have less people.
Yeah.
All right, but you should make some money.
I don't want to make money.
Yeah.
I don't want to make money at this. Obviously, you and I do this for reasons we're not sure about. There's some
money.
Yeah.
Okay, well then you could start charging. You could
See how I do?
You could be my promoter. No, you could promote.
That's a recommendation. Start a meetup
He gets a
group
5%.
and
Yeah, he
say
gets a
I'm
5%
charging
finder's
per
fee.
game.
That's right. Per
Yeah.
minute, per hour.
Per minute, right?
That'll keep him focused.
That's true. Not a lot of arguing, not a lot of dawdling. I like that. You
Yeah.
should have a panel. Yeah, I like that. Okay.
I actually got an email from a friend of mine from back in high school who we used to play, and he sent a copy of this thing where there was a community center and they charge, for the kids, it's $10 for a 3-hour meetup, something like that, up to a max. And I'm like, and people are making money. Well, some of the online, I don't know if you've seen some of the online.
Yeah.
One of the big ones is that everybody who comes in now thinks that it's going to be voiceover and character, for everything that Big Bang Theory has done to help, it's also done to hurt, because
Yeah,
I'm not doing voices,
Right.
my dragons are not going to sound like Christopher Plummer or anything like that. It's just,
Or Christopher Walken.
or Christopher,
Who
thank you,
Smog
Christopher
was-
Walken.
Yeah, who was Smog
that's right.
was, what's his name?
Cumberbatch.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not going to be my game.
It's
If
more
that's what you're
like
looking
Cabbage
for.
Patch.
Yes, if that's what you're looking for, you're going to be a little. You're going to be.
And you don't have to. And that. Oh, it's interesting you bring that up, because I forgot about that. That you better put that in your rules and expectations, because you may get that person who shows up and they're in full regalia with the horns and they got the the flowing robes and everything else. Because you watch online, some of these people they're out of. So if you have someone who's just watched the internet and all they've seen is how role playing is there, and and they've got the tiefling horns and they got the black, and they show up with this, and everyone else looks like, well,
They just rolled out
they
of.
look like us.
Yeah.
I thought we should have like an '80s night, don't you think? Like show up in like I don't know, like
That would be totally
Fanta's
tubular.
t-shirt, wouldn't it?
That would
Right?
be
Really go retro.
Exactly.
Some corduroys,
Oh.
brown corduroys.
See that brings up the husky corduroys. That's what I remember from the '80s. So thank you, Dan. See, some of us didn't have the couldn't shop at the kids section, even though we're older. We went to the husky corduroys, but that wasn't bad. So.
Sorry, didn't realize that was.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not bitter.
Sorry.
Going back to the George Costanza thing.
So use Roll20, use Skype.
Right, use Skype.
Have you tried Fantasy Grounds or?
I haven't tried
D&D
Fantasy
Beyond?
Grounds. I did. I put when I was first playing and looking for when not Roll20, D&D Beyond started. I put an advertisement out there. Orlando looking to play, kind of thing. You got to be careful of your wording.
That's a whole other section.
That's a whole other section. I'm sorry I went there.
Well, Meetup. I gotta warn people about Meetup. I think you will get people looking.
Yeah.
You will get
for
people.
for different type of role playing.
Yeah,
yes.
live action role playing.
They
I've
are
run
looking to
into-
be paid, I believe. They will join your group, and
Wait
they
a
are
minute, I'm
looking.
getting paid.
Yeah.
I'm the DM. No, I'm
No,
getting paid.
No, you're paying me. Yeah, that can be really confusing. Like, I'm ready for you. Okay, you can pay me now. No,
Right.
you can
No,
pay
me
me.
now.
I'm sorry. What?
Yeah. So I'm sorry I opened that can of worms. My
No, they
apologies.
need to know that. Yeah, I had to ban a couple people. I had to ban, I think, 2 people who joined the group, and it was quite clear they were interested in something else.
Live action role playing.
Exactly. And you're right.
In a medieval setting. Exactly.
Right.
Okay.
I don't know. I was really hurt that they would think that a Grognard's Guild
Right.
was right for potential customers.
Right.
And
What was that saying about us? That they looked at us and they're like, oh yeah, those guys.
Target rich environment.
Always recruiting.
right.
Unfortunately, they were doing the same thing for a different reason. Yeah.
Anybody playing D&D
Right.
in their 50s or 60s, this is, okay.
Anyway, I'm sorry. Sorry for that detour.
That's okay.
Yeah. So just I went there. There were no responses. I went to a couple other places, and I just found another one recently, RPG Table, and I meant to bring. And that's international. Most of them are posted in, they're, and I'm like, no, I want people in my time zone,
But that would
Nothing
be
against my group,
Yeah,
but
that would be interesting. I mean, I'm certainly, I don't know how sustainable that is because again, the time issues. But that
Right.
would be, I think that's why this is such an interesting renaissance in that you could see how because we talk about that's what conventions do. It's a substitute for conventions. When you go to GaryCon, you learn different ways of playing.
Yes.
Oh, that's how we play. That's how that's done. Now you can do it at an international level. See the cultural differences. The
yes,
tinderbox
mhm.
kind of thing. So I think that's a very interesting.
Oh, and
thing.
meters versus feet. That's the other thing that I find
Right.
that we've had.
So the
issues
Mars
with.
rovers.
Exactly.
landed.
Yeah, we missed. Yeah, we did that. We didn't do a conversion. Yeah.
In our country, we love the gnome. The gnome is king.
Yes.
What?
Yeah.
This is so strange.
Yeah, that country needs to be banned. Okay, so I think we've talked enough about this. Any other final comments related to starting a group or running a group using the internet? Dan, any other thoughts?
No, I think I've said everything I.
Bob, what
think
about
of.
you?
Just same things in real life as be flexible, be available, realize that life is going to happen.
Well, very good. So that wraps up a word of recall. Now we're going to go into our suggestion segment. And so my suggestion is use this tool that's called OneNote. It's free, and I put all my campaign notes in it. I think back in the day we would have our Dungeon Master screen, and we'd have 3x5 or a notebook, and that's fine. But the challenge becomes collecting all this information, and so OneNote is a way you can collect notes and you can relate to them, and it's a free tool, and it works on your iPad, it works on your Android tablet, it works on your computer, and so for like the show notes for this, for like the campaign, I keep things and it synchronizes them all together, and you can relate things. So it's there's a little bit of a learning curve just to get out of the mindset that it's kind of this virtual notebook, but it allows you to as you have ideas, instead of just having this random thing of notes, you can tag things, you can organize them. And I use it to keep all my NPCs, I use it to keep my maps, I use it to keep my rules in there. So, of course, those online, you can't see this. So, here's I can keep the map of the thing on here. So, I'll show it to the screen. That way you can't see it, never mind. I can keep the characters in here. So, again, it's a function of how much prep time you have and how much time you want to keep organized things. And the reason you do that, in my opinion, is that if your players, you're playing, as this is my opinion, Dan, I've talked about, you're DMing for 25% of your group. And you said, what do you mean by that? Well, because the rest of them, they're there for different reasons. They're there because it's a social thing, or they just want to hit stuff. They don't really care about your campaign. But then you got 2 to 3 people who are like, oh yeah, they love their character, they love the world they're in, and so you're playing for them. So if you put the effort in, you want to keep that going, and you've got to eventually. It's kind of like whether it's Star Wars or Harry Potter. These people remember. Hey, remember that merchant we met 3 sessions ago? We should go talk to him. You're like, what was that 3 sessions ago? Oh, that was Garcon. And when you can pull it up and it's the same thing in consistency, they go, oh wow, he's really putting time into it. And unless you're pondering this all the time, you want to at least have some organization. So I use OneNote to do that. So I hope you fail your save and you go look at it if you're looking for a way to organize your stuff. So Dan, do you have a suggestion for this week?
Well, my suggestion is going to be a not surprising one. It's going to be use meetup.com. If you want to form a group and you're listening to this podcast and you're like, wow, I sure wish I could play first edition again. My suggestion is to sign up on Meetup, form a group, set a date, and see if people come.
And actively recruit.
Always be recruiting.
Now, is there a cost to set up the meetup? Or
there is, and I can't remember what the cost is, but there is a cost. But what you could do is, if you wanted to, you could use the meetup group to get players, and then you could cancel it. So you don't have to keep the meetup page. I mean, we've kept it because we want to keep recruiting, we want to grow.
Yeah.
But I think most people out there listening are probably not terribly interested in forming multiple groups that they're not even playing in. They just want 3 or 4
Right.
other players.
But you could host a number of groups if you wanted to as well, or is it just one group per price? How does that work?
Well, it increases the amount of members. So you have a meetup group and you have a price, and that price increases based. So as we've grown, I mean, this is one of the downsides. Is, we have over 200 members. Now the reality is, we only have, I think you mentioned before, maybe not even maybe up to maybe 15, 16 players who are really active players. I think a lot of people like to sign up for meetup groups. So they're in a group.
Yeah.
It's very easy just to click it.
Interesting.
Yes.
But you don't do anything. You don't
that's
do anything. Yeah, so the vast majority, the overwhelming majority of our members they're either lurking or they're not even paying attention. And that does increase the cost. I think what you can do is you can set a limit on the amount of members as well. And you can drop members. If people have not been active, come to anything in a certain amount of time, they get dropped automatically. So there's things that you can do to keep down the price.
Okay.
But like I said, what you might, if you're just looking to find 5 other players, you could create the meetup group, try to find the players, and then you can cancel it once you find the players.
Okay, great. So hopefully you'll fail that suggestion. We are not sponsored by Meetup, but of course if Meetup would like to sponsor us, we'd be happy to. You can go to info@grogtalk.com and tell us this great partnership we can have. So Bob, what's yours? Do you have a suggestion for this week?
Skype. I guess that's kind of easy, but
That's okay.
Yeah, anything that gets your players in the virtual room at the same time, that everybody, the easiest thing you can use is the best, because to me, the more you start adding layer upon layer upon layer, the more problems, and as a tech person, this almost pains me to say, the more layers and things that you add onto it, the more likely you are to have something go wrong in the middle, or have somebody who can't do it, or they're on a different version of something. So start off small and add. Don't start off huge, because something will always go wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there used to be Google Hangouts, but I think that's gone away now. So really, or at least some of the other online tools. So Skype is kind of ubiquitous. I mean, I think you could use FaceTime if everyone was an Apple user, but some kind of group sharing.
Something that gets you all in the same place.
Roll20 has it, a feature of that. I think Skype works a little bit better. My experience has been, though, that this way you only have one platform. What's your, as far as do you use multiple devices, or you just use Skype for one and then you keep your notes on another?
Skype is just the way we all get together in a thing. The biggest problem that I've had is trying to get where you want to send out messages to, how do I send out messages to one member of the party?
Yeah.
And we all have cell phones, so I've texted things to, the dwarf notices this, but the other characters don't notice this. We even have a sub-kick group for Elvish speakers, so that the three of them that speak Elvish can talk.
So you're segregating people.
Right. Yeah, they are. They're
self-selecting.
Right. So, but I never would have. One of my players already sent me a link and said, "Yeah, here's a group for just Elvish speakers." I'm like, "Wow, I never would have thought of that." I send text messages every once in a while for stuff like that. We have one character who gets dream messages, so I have to type up, and that's the first 2 dreams I sent her. I didn't send to her on any kind of media. I just told her.
Yeah.
And then, like last week, she came back and said, "Well, what was that first dream?" And I was like,
OneNote.
Yeah, one exactly. So
Yeah,
and that's actually a great idea. But and then one of my players who has gotten really into it in DMs a live group now in person, and he's keeping a journal based on his character. So I actually had to go back and tell him, can you go back to this session and
oh, okay.
That we had 3 doors and they were 3 different colors, but was the red one in the middle or the blue one in the middle? And again, I said it was a year ago, so I didn't remember, and he actually had that in his journal.
Wonderful.
So it was like,
Well, very good. Well, we hope you fail your suggestion on that, because we want you to play. I mean, and part of this reason we're doing the podcast is to try to lower the bar for folks who want to start playing again or have never played. So again, we're GrogCon at Crucible, which is the tournament, and I think we're meeting very soon, like today.
That is possible.
That is possible. Yeah, we're still waiting for some confirmation apparently. So we're scheduled in October 11th through the 13th.
October, yeah, that Crucible 8, October 11th through the 13th.
Right. So if you're in the Central Florida area, you can go to grogcon.com. We're on YouTube. We're live stream this shenanigans every Saturday morning. We're on Twitter at GROGTALK. Our website is grogcon.com, and where we have our podcast, which is available on Google Play, iTunes. We're always looking for pictures and items, future things you want us to talk about, guests, which you can send at info@grogcon.com. Please like and subscribe. If you're on iTunes, and if you think, boy, people should be hearing these guys talk about Dungeons and Dragons, we need you to review. I'm sure you hear in other podcasts. So your call to action is give us a rating, put up things so that Apple overlords will then suggest us to other people, so we can get more shenanigans. And our subscriptions are slowly increasing on YouTube. We have more. That's from a percentage, we're doing outstanding. From a overall, we still have some opportunities.
Yeah, since our first episode, I think we're over 17,000% or
right.
something.
That's right.
Or
Yeah, I think it's almost 18,000%.
Right. So that's pretty amazing. You name another podcast that has had that kind of.
I think every podcast has had this.
I wasn't going to go there, but yeah.
On behalf, I'm James.
I'm Dan.
And
I'm Bob.
And so thanks for listening to Grog Talk, and we'll see you next week.